They say you never truly know someone until money's on the table. I learned that lesson when I was lying in a hospital bed with tubes down my throat, and my own daughter thought I couldn't hear her planning my funeral, or rather, planning what she'd do with my house. My name is Catherine Walsh, and I'm 72 years old. Before you hear this story, I need you to do me a favor. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Are you in Florida? California? Maybe somewhere in between? I want to know I'm not alone in this because what I'm about to share with you still keeps me up at night. 3 years later. It was March of 2022. I was in Mercy General Hospital in Portland, Oregon, fighting for my life after a massive heart attack. Not my first one, mind you. I'd had a smaller one 6 months prior, but this one nearly took me out for good. I'd flatlined twice that week. Twice, they'd shocked my heart back into rhythm. Twice, I'd clawed my way back from whatever darkness was waiting on the other side. My daughter Jessica was 47 then, my only child. The little girl I'd raised alone after her father walked out when she was 3. The girl I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college. The woman I'd helped buy her first house, co-signing the loan when her credit wasn't quite good enough. The mother of my 2 grandchildren, whom I'd babysat every Thursday for 10 years, so she could have date nights with her husband, Marcus. I thought we were close. I really did. That Tuesday evening, I was drifting in and out of consciousness. The medication made everything foggy, like I was underwater. The doctors had told Jessica that the next 48 hours were critical. I remember her squeezing my hand that morning, tears in her eyes, telling me to fight, telling me she needed me, telling me the kids needed their grandmother. I believed her. Around 7 p.m., I heard voices in the hallway outside my room. The ICU was quiet except for the beeping of monitors and the occasional shuffle of nurses' shoes. My door was cracked open. Hospital policy so they could check on critical patients quickly. I recognized Jessica's voice immediately, that particular pitch she gets when she's excited about something. Mom's house is paid off, she was saying. It's worth at least $600,000 in this market, maybe more. That neighborhood's gotten so desirable. I felt a cold sensation in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. A man's voice responded. Marcus, her husband. Jess, don't talk about this here. It's not appropriate. I'm just saying, Jessica continued, and I could hear her footsteps pacing. If she doesn't make it, we can finally renovate our kitchen. You know how long I've been wanting that. And maybe finally take that trip to Europe we've been putting off. The kids could use new laptops for school, too. God knows Mom would want us to be comfortable. Would want. Past tense. Like I was already gone. My heart monitor started beeping faster. A nurse came rushing in, and Jessica and Marcus disappeared down the hallway. But I'd heard enough. The nurse adjusted my IV and checked my vitals, asking if I was in pain. I wanted to scream that yes, I was in pain, but not the kind she could treat with morphine. Instead, I just closed my eyes and pretended to sleep while she fussed over me. Indeed. That night stretched on forever. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, my body tensed. Every time a shadow crossed my doorway, I wondered if it was Jessica coming back to check if I died yet so she could start calling contractors. I kept replaying her words in my mind. If she doesn't make it. Not when she gets better. Not when she comes home. If. She'd already written me off, and that comment about the house being paid off. She'd been keeping track. Calculating. Planning. You need to understand something about my relationship with Jessica. I wasn't a perfect mother, but I'd given her everything I had. After Tom left, I worked as a dental hygienist during the day and cleaned offices at night. I wore secondhand clothes so she could have new ones. I drove a beat-up Honda Civic for 20 years so I could afford her college tuition. When she got married, I paid for half the wedding, even though tradition says the bride's family pays for all of it. I insisted on helping Marcus's parents, who were struggling financially. I'd help them with down payments, car repairs, emergency vet bills when their dog needed surgery. Last Christmas, I'd given them $5,000 to help with credit card debt they'd mentioned in passing. Jessica had hugged me and cried, saying I was too generous, that she didn't deserve me. Apparently, she was right about that last part. By Wednesday morning, my condition had stabilized somewhat. Dr. Patterson came in around 6 a.m. for rounds. He was a kind man in his 50s, with graying temples and a gentle manner that had comforted me throughout this ordeal. "Catherine, you're a fighter," he said, reviewing my charts. "Your numbers are improving. We're not out of the woods yet, but you're heading in the right direction." "When can I go home?" I asked, my voice raspy from the breathing tube they'd removed the day before. He hesitated. "Let's not rush things. You've had a severe cardiac event. We need to monitor you closely, get you stable on medications, maybe look at surgical options. You're looking at minimum 2 more weeks here, possibly longer." 2 more weeks of lying there, wondering what Jessica was saying when I couldn't hear. 2 more weeks of being treated like I was already dead. 2 more weeks of being valued only for what I could leave behind. "I understand," I told him, but my mind was already working. Jessica came to visit that afternoon. She brought flowers, yellow roses, my favorites, and sat in the chair beside my bed, holding my hand and talking about the kids. Tyler had made the honor roll. Emma had scored the winning goal in her soccer game. Everything was so normal, so loving, so absolutely fake. I watched her face as she spoke, searching for signs of the woman who'd stood in that hallway discussing renovation plans while I lay dying 30 feet away. "Mom, you scared us so badly," Jessica said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I knew exactly what she'd do. She'd call a realtor. "The kids want to come see you, but the ICU rules are strict," she continued. "Maybe when they move you to a regular room. Marcus wanted to come today, but he had that big meeting at work he couldn't miss." Or maybe he couldn't face me after I'd overheard their conversation. I wondered if Jessica had told him I might have heard. I wondered if they'd discussed it, decided I was too drugged up to remember, too sick to matter. "That's fine," I managed to say. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" The endearment tasted like poison in my mouth, but I forced it out. I needed her to think everything was normal. I needed time to think, to plan. She talked for another 20 minutes about mundane things. The weather, a problem with their garbage disposal, a funny thing Emma had said. All the while I was studying her, this woman I'd created, nursed, raised, sacrificed for. Where had I gone wrong? Or had she always been this way, and I'd been too blind to see it? When she left, she kissed my forehead. "I love you, Mom. Get some rest." I waited until her footsteps faded down the hallway. Then I waited another 10 minutes. Then I pressed the call button. A young nurse named Amy responded. I'd liked her from my first night here. She was efficient but kind, never making me feel like a burden. "Amy, I need to ask you something," I said quietly, "and I need you to be honest with me. How bad is my situation really?" She looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Walsh, you should discuss that with Dr. Patterson. I'm asking you. Nurse to patient, woman to woman, am I dying?" She pulled up a chair and sat down, which told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke. "You've been very sick. The next few weeks are crucial, but Dr. Patterson is one of the best cardiologists in the state. If anyone can get you through this, he can. But I could die. Anyone could die, Mrs. Walsh. You've survived 2 cardiac arrests this week. That tells me you're a fighter." I appreciated her honesty. "Thank you. One more question. If I wanted to check myself out of here against medical advice, could I?" Her eyes widened. "Technically, yes, but it would be extremely dangerous. You need monitoring, medication adjustments, possibly surgery. I understand the risks. I'm just asking about the process." She studied my face, and I could see her mind working, wondering what had prompted this question. "You'd have to sign forms acknowledging the risks. Your doctor would strongly advise against it. Your family would probably try to stop you. Why are you asking this?" "Just curious," I said, giving her what I hoped was a reassuring smile. "Just wanting to know my options." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded and left. I lay there in that sterile room, surrounded by machines keeping me alive, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to die in Portland. I wasn't going to give Jessica the satisfaction of inheriting a house she'd already spent in her mind, and I certainly wasn't going to let her play the grieving daughter at my funeral while secretly celebrating her kitchen renovation. I was going to disappear. The plan formed slowly over the next few days. I had to be smart about it. I had to get stronger first. I couldn't exactly flee across the country if I couldn't walk to the bathroom without assistance. So I followed every instruction the doctors gave me. I ate the bland hospital food. I did the breathing exercises. I walked the hallways with my IV pole, building up my endurance. I smiled at Jessica when she visited and pretended everything was fine. But in the quiet moments I was planning, I had access to my phone and I started making arrangements. My sister Linda lived in Asheville, North Carolina. We'd been close as girls but had drifted apart over the years, mainly because Jessica had never liked her, said Aunt Linda was too negative and always stirring up drama. Now I wondered if Linda had simply seen through Jessica in ways I'd refused to. I called Linda late one night when the hospital was quiet and the nurse's station was dealing with an emergency 3 rooms down. "Catherine? Is everything okay? Jessica called me last week and said you were in the hospital." "I'm fine," I lied. "Linda, I need a favor, a big one, and I need you not to ask questions until I can explain everything in person." There was a pause. Then, "What do you need?" "Can I come stay with you for a while? Maybe a few months?" "Of course. But what about Jessica? Won't she?" "Linda, please. I'll explain everything. I just need to know if you can do this for me." "You're my sister. My door is always open. But Catherine, you're scaring me." "I know. I'm sorry. I just need to get away from Portland for a while. Can you wire me some money? About $2,000? I'll pay you back as soon as I can access my accounts without Jessica knowing." Another pause, longer this time. "Jessica's been handling your accounts?" "She has power of attorney. I set it up years ago just in case. I'm going to revoke it, but I need to do it carefully. Can you help me?" "Wire me your information. The money will be there tomorrow. And Catherine, whatever's going on, you've got me. Always." I hung up feeling something I hadn't felt since I'd overheard that conversation in the hallway. Hope. Dr. Patterson released me to a regular room after 8 days in the ICU. My heart was stable, he said, but I'd need to take it easy for months. Cardiac rehabilitation, medication, regular checkups, no stress. I nodded and agreed to everything while mentally planning the most stressful thing I'd ever done. The regular room gave me more freedom. Visitors could come and go more easily. I wasn't hooked up to quite as many machines. I could use the bathroom alone. Most importantly, I could pack a small bag without anyone questioning it. Jessica had brought me a few items from home: pajamas, my toothbrush, my reading glasses. I'd asked for my purse, claiming I wanted to check something in my wallet. She'd brought it without suspicion. Inside was everything I needed: my driver's license, credit cards, and the checkbook to an account she didn't know about. A small savings account I'd opened 30 years ago and had been putting money into secretly, $50 here and there. It had about $12,000 in it. My emergency fund. I'd never imagined I'd be using it to escape my own daughter. Linda's money arrived at a Western Union location 3 blocks from the hospital. I had a patient transport aide named Miguel who'd been helping me with walks around the floor. He was a sweet kid, maybe 25, putting himself through nursing school. "Miguel, I need another favor," I said on day 12. "Can you help me walk down to the hospital lobby? I need to see the chapel." It wasn't unusual. Lots of patients sought solace in the small interfaith chapel on the first floor. He helped me into a wheelchair, I still tired easily, and took me down. "I'll wait here," he said when we arrived. "Actually, I'd like some time alone to pray. Could you come back in maybe 45 minutes? He looked hesitant. "Mrs. Walsh, I really shouldn't leave you alone. If something happens..." "I have my phone. The chapel has an emergency button. And honestly, Miguel, if God wants me now, he's going to take me whether you're sitting outside the door or not." He laughed despite himself. "Okay, but 45 minutes, and then I'm coming in whether you're done praying or not." As soon as he left, I wheeled myself out the chapel's side door, which led to a corridor connecting to the main hospital entrance. The Western Union was 3 blocks away. It was March in Portland, which meant rain and cold. I had a light jacket Jessica had brought me, but I was still in hospital pajamas and slippers. I didn't care. The walk took me 20 minutes, and I thought my heart might give out again before I got there. Every step was agony. My chest ached. My legs shook. People stared at the old woman in hospital clothes shuffling down the sidewalk, but no one stopped me. That's the thing about cities. Everyone's got their own problems. The clerk at Western Union looked concerned. "Ma'am, are you okay? Should I call someone?" "I'm fine. Just picking up a wire transfer under Catherine Walsh." She processed it quickly, maybe worried I'd collapse right there at her counter. I took the cash, $2,000 in 20s, and stuffed it in my purse. Then I made the agonizing walk back. Miguel was pacing outside the chapel when I returned, looking panicked. "Mrs. Walsh, where were you? I went into the chapel and you weren't there." "I'm so sorry," I said, genuinely meaning it. I got confused and went out the wrong door. I ended up near the cafeteria and couldn't figure out how to get back. An orderly helped me. He didn't look entirely convinced, but he helped me back to my room without reporting the incident. I think he was just relieved I hadn't died on his watch. That night, I barely slept. My escape was planned for the next afternoon, when Jessica would be at Emma's soccer tournament across town. I'd scheduled it carefully. She'd told me all about it, how important this game was, how she'd hate to miss it, but she'd come see me after. "Don't be silly," I'd told her. "Go support Emma. I'll be fine here. They're releasing me in a few days anyway." That part was true. Dr. Patterson had said if my numbers stayed stable, I could go home on Friday. It was Tuesday. I wasn't waiting. I'd arranged for a taxi to pick me up at the emergency department entrance at 2 p.m. I told the driver I was an employee finishing a shift, not a patient escaping. I'd found a nurse's uniform online that delivered to the hospital, told them it was for my daughter who worked here. It was close enough to my size. At 1:30, I told the floor nurse I was tired and going to nap. I closed my door, changed into the scrubs, packed my few belongings into the small bag Jessica had brought, and walked out of my room like I belonged there. My heart was pounding. From fear or exertion, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. I expected someone to stop me at any moment, to ask questions, to call security. But I was just another healthcare worker in scrubs, walking purposefully through the corridors. People smiled and nodded as I passed. The taxi was waiting where I'd arranged. The driver, an older Sikh man with kind eyes, helped me into the back seat. "Where to, ma'am?" "Greyhound Station, please." He pulled away from the hospital, and I watched it disappear in the side mirror. I'd been in there for almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks of being treated like I was already dead. 2 weeks of listening to Jessica's fake concern while knowing what she really wanted. At the station, I bought a ticket to Sacramento, paying cash. From there, I'd catch another bus to Reno, then to Salt Lake City, then Denver, then finally Asheville. It would take 4 days of travel, 4 days of being anonymous, 4 days of being free. Before I want to pause here for just a moment, if this story is resonating with you, if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I share stories like this because I know I'm not alone in what I've experienced, and maybe you need to hear that you're not alone either. I boarded that bus at 4:15 p.m. By the time Jessica finished cheering at Emma's soccer game and came to the hospital for her evening visit, I was somewhere near the Oregon-California border, watching the landscape change through a smudged bus window. Why? The first call came around 7 p.m. I'd turned off my phone, but I'd promised Linda I'd check it once a day so she wouldn't worry. When I powered it on at a rest stop outside Redding, there were 17 missed calls from Jessica, 12 from Marcus, 3 from Dr. Patterson's office, 5 voicemails. I listened to the first one from Jessica. Her voice was frantic. "Mom, where are you? The hospital said you left. They have security footage of you walking out in scrubs. What's happening? Are you confused? Did you have a stroke? Please call me back. I'm terrified. Marcus and I are driving around looking for you. Mom, please, just let me know you're okay." The fear in her voice sounded real. Maybe it was. Maybe she did care, somewhere beneath the calculations about renovation budgets and European vacations. Or maybe she was just scared because a missing mother is much harder to inherit from than a dead one. I didn't call back. The bus ride was brutal. My body wasn't ready for this kind of travel. Every bump in the road sent pain through my chest. I rationed the medication I'd managed to slip into my bag before leaving, enough for about a week if I was careful. Other passengers gave me curious looks. An elderly woman traveling alone, looking exhausted and pale. One woman offered me a sandwich. Another asked if I needed help. "Just visiting family," I told them. "My sister's expecting me." In Sacramento, during the 6-hour layover, I found an internet cafe and did something I should have done years ago. I revoked Jessica's power of attorney. I filled out the forms online, got them notarized at a 24-hour UPS store, and emailed copies to my bank and lawyer. Then I drafted a new will, leaving everything to medical charities, and my sister Linda. Jessica would get nothing. The second call came in Denver. This time it was the police. "Mrs. Walsh, this is Detective Morrison with the Portland Police Department. Your daughter has filed a missing person report. She's very concerned about your welfare. Can you confirm that you're safe and that you left the hospital of your own volition?" I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would either confirm my freedom or trap me back in that life. "Yes, Detective. I'm safe. I left voluntarily. I'm of sound mind. I simply chose to relocate without informing my family." "Ma'am, you were seriously ill. Your daughter says you had 2 cardiac arrests last week. Don't you think it's dangerous to be traveling alone?" "Detective, with all due respect, how I manage my health is my business. I'm 72 years old, not 72 years mentally incompetent. I have every right to go where I please." There was a pause. "That's true, ma'am. But your daughter is very worried. Would you be willing to let us inform her that you're alive and safe? You can tell her I'm alive. You can tell her I left voluntarily. You can tell her I'm of sound mind, but I don't want you to tell her where I am, and I don't want her contacting me." Detective Morrison's voice changed slightly. "Mrs. Walsh, has something happened? Has your daughter done something to harm you?" How could I explain it? That she hadn't laid a hand on me, but her words had cut deeper than any knife, that she'd planned my estate like I was already a ghost? Let's just say I overheard a conversation that clarified our relationship. I'm exercising my right to distance myself from people who don't have my best interests at heart. He was quiet for a long moment, and then, "I understand. I'll inform her of your status, but not your location. Mrs. Walsh, take care of yourself." "Thank you, Detective." I arrived in Asheville on a Saturday morning, 4 days after leaving Portland. Linda was waiting at the station, and when she saw me shuffle off that bus, she burst into tears. "Catherine, my God, you look awful." I feel worse than I look, and I look like death warmed over, so that's saying something. She helped me to her car, a practical Toyota that smelled like vanilla air freshener. Her house was a modest ranch style in a quiet neighborhood, with a garden in the front and wind chimes on the porch. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Tell me everything," she said once we were inside and she'd settled me on her couch with tea and blankets. So I did. I told her about the heart attacks, about the conversation I'd overheard, about the calculation in Jessica's voice when she discussed my house's market value. I told her about the bus ride and the police call and the will I'd changed in a UPS store at 2 a.m. Linda listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was crying again. "That little bitch," she said, and I was so surprised by the venom in her voice that I almost laughed. Linda never cursed. I always knew something was off about her, Catherine, the way she'd talk about money, about what things cost. Remember when you bought them that bedroom set for their anniversary? She told me later she'd calculated that you'd spent more on her brother-in-law's wedding gift than on hers, and she was keeping track. She doesn't have a brother-in-law. Exactly. She was comparing gifts you'd given to other people's siblings, making sure she was getting her fair share. Who does that? I sank deeper into the couch cushions. Her mother, apparently. the woman who thought love was measured in dollars spent and sacrifices made. Don't you dare blame yourself. You were a wonderful mother. She's just broken, somehow. Some people are. The next few weeks were hard. My body was recovering, but slowly. Linda took me to a cardiologist in Asheville, Dr. Reed, who was horrified when he heard what I'd done. "Mrs. Walsh, you could have died on that bus. You still could die if we don't get you properly stabilized." "But I didn't die, doctor. And now I'm here. And I'd appreciate it if you'd help me live a bit longer." He did, through appointments and medication adjustments and stern lectures about taking better care of myself. Meanwhile, Jessica was calling Linda, 5-6 times a day at first. Linda didn't answer. Then came the texts, the emails, the Facebook messages. "Please tell me where my mother is. I'm worried sick. She needs medical care. She's not thinking clearly. She could die alone somewhere and we'd never know. Please, Aunt Linda, I'm begging you." Linda showed me the messages. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. Let her worry. Let her feel a fraction of the fear she made me feel." But it gnawed at me. Not guilt, exactly. I had nothing to feel guilty about, but a kind of sad finality. This was really it. I was really cutting my daughter out of my life, my only child, the grandchildren I'd probably never see again. Tyler would be applying to colleges soon. Emma would get her driver's license. There would be graduations, maybe weddings someday, maybe great-grandchildren. And I'd miss all of it because I couldn't stand to be in the same room as the woman who'd birthed them. "You're grieving," Linda said one evening as we sat on her porch watching the sunset. "You're allowed to grieve. I'm grieving someone who might never have existed, the Jessica I thought I knew, the one who loved me. Maybe she was never real. Maybe I invented her because I needed her to be real. Or maybe she was real once and changed. People do that. Life hardens them. Money corrupts them. Who knows?" 3 months passed. Spring turned to summer. My health improved dramatically. The fresh air, the peace, the absence of stress. They were better medicine than anything Dr. Reed prescribed. I started walking in Linda's neighborhood every morning. I joined a book club at the local library. I even went on a date with a retired teacher named Frank, who made terrible jokes and had kind eyes. I was building a life. A smaller life than I'd had in Portland, maybe. But it was mine, and it wasn't haunted by betrayal. Then one day in July, Linda showed me an email from Jessica. It was different from the others. Shorter, angrier. "Aunt Linda, I know you know where my mother is. The police told me she's alive and made contact with them. She's clearly able to communicate, which means she's chosen not to talk to me. If she wants to throw away our relationship over whatever imagined slight she thinks I committed, that's her choice. But she should know that she's breaking her grandchildren's hearts. Tyler asks about her every day. Emma cries at night, but I guess that doesn't matter to her anymore. Tell her we'll be fine without her. Tell her we've been managing her estate. Yes, the court granted me conservatorship after she abandoned her medical care, and we're selling the house to cover the costs of the search effort and legal fees. She can contest it if she cares to come back to Oregon. Otherwise, she should enjoy her new life, wherever she is." I read it 3 times. Then I called a lawyer. The best decision I ever made. My lawyer, Helen Martinez, was a fierce woman in her 60s who specialized in elder law. When I explained the situation, her eyes turned to steel. "She can't do that. You're alive. You're competent. You revoked her power of attorney. Any conservatorship would be fraudulent." But she said the court granted it. Based on what? "You weren't present. You weren't evaluated. Catherine, your daughter has committed several crimes here. We need to act fast before she liquidates your assets." We did. Helen filed an emergency motion in Oregon court, including my medical records from Dr. Reed, proving I was competent and managing my own care. She submitted the notarized revocation of power of attorney. She provided a sworn statement from Detective Morrison confirming I'd left voluntarily. The judge was not pleased with Jessica. Not pleased at all. The hearing was scheduled for August 15th. Helen said I didn't have to attend. We could appear by video, but I wanted to be there. I needed to see Jessica's face when it all fell apart. Linda drove me to Portland. We stayed at a hotel near the courthouse. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. Part of me expected Jessica to show up at the hotel somehow, to try one last manipulation, but she didn't. She never was good with confrontation unless she thought she held all the cards. The courtroom was small and wood-paneled. Jessica sat with her lawyer, a nervous-looking young man who kept shuffling papers. She wore a black dress like she was in mourning. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like the grieving daughter she'd been pretending to be. Then she saw me walk in, and her face went white. "Mom," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. I didn't respond. I sat down next to Helen and kept my eyes forward. The judge, a woman named Sandra Brennan, got right to it. "Miss Walsh, you petitioned this court for conservatorship over your mother, claiming she was missing and potentially incompetent. Yet here she sits, very much present and represented by counsel. Would you care to explain?" Jessica's lawyer stammered something about reasonable belief and duty of care. Judge Brennan cut him off. "Your client filed for conservatorship 3 weeks after the police informed her that Mrs. Walsh was alive and had chosen to relocate. She then proceeded to list her mother's house for sale and transfer funds from her accounts. This isn't a case of concerned family member. This is fraud." It was over in 20 minutes. The conservatorship was dissolved. Jessica was ordered to return every penny she'd taken from my accounts. The house sale was nullified, and Judge Brennan recommended the district attorney investigate Jessica for fraud and elder abuse. Jessica tried to approach me as we left the courtroom. "Mom, please, let me explain. I was scared. I thought you were sick, not thinking clearly." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd carried in my body, nursed at my breast, loved with everything I had. "You thought I was dying and your first thought was renovation budgets. That's all I need to know." That was the last time I saw her. I sold the Portland house myself and bought a small cottage in Asheville. Linda and I are neighbors now, and Frank is a regular dinner guest. I'm 75 now, my heart is strong, and I'm finally at peace, living a life where nobody's waiting for me to die.